Good morning. We're well into the new year now, and New York City has had a snowstorm, but it's perfectly beautiful at this time in the morning. And when you receive the video next Tuesday, I'll give you a photograph of what it looked like early this morning when I got up. It was pretty dreary out there, but now, like everything else, changed. The weather changed, and it may be cold, but it's beautiful and sunny outside. I understand while everyone's going to Facebook for the news. This morning, I looked at several newspapers and absolutely could not find anything that I wanted to report on. It wasn't until I went to PUBLICA, a paper that is investigative news by fine investigative journalists, did I find anything that I felt was worthwhile and encapsulates what we're going through. They talked about COVID-19 in Hong Kong and compared what they've done there with zero tolerance for COVID versus what we're finding here in the States and New York City in particular. We're talking about how do we live with COVID endemically? Well, turns out Hong Kong isn't. They're a population of about 7.5 million people. You come to their shores, you quarantine for 21 days after being assured that you are negative. When you get out of quarantine, you may freely go throughout the cities. Everyone is masked, whether it's indoors or out, even though there is zero tolerance for COVID. But you can rest assured that you can meet freely with your family, your friends, take the public transportation, and know that you're going to be safe. During this entire period that we have been wondering how many more deaths to expect, they've had about 213. That's it. And they're scared that perhaps because of their tough policies, they're going to have a brain drain. Well, New York City, which has been struggling to open off and on for weeks now, we lost 35,500 folks to COVID, and 300,000 people have left the city. I ask you, which way is better? I can't make that decision, but you got to think about it. Florida's decision has been, okay, we're not using masks. We're going to put monoclonal antibodies in as many places as possible. You get COVID, you take the monoclonals, you feel better, and that's the end of it. Right now, however, monoclonals, there's only one that protects you against the Omicron virus variant. And that may be, it's either GlaxoSmithKline or AstraZeneca. Only one. So, and there are side effects. If you get COVID, there's always the possibility you will develop systemic diseases afterwards. Your autoimmune system will be hyperactivated. It's far better to get the vaccine. No matter what, it's better to have the vaccine. That's one of the major items that's affecting our country today. And it's one of the reasons everyone is saying, oh, do we have to worry about inflation? Do we have to worry about the job market? Well, job market, yes. Inflation, no. If we actually pass the Families Act, which they've been saying they're going to do, and then they say, well, maybe people don't want it, I keep wondering what in the world and who in the world are they listening to? And I don't know who the they is either. And I don't know what the polls are either. All I know is what I read. In 1971, Lewis Powell, no relation to Jay, in the Federal Reserve, he was head of the Chamber of Commerce, and he noticed that labor was making too much money, and labor was absolutely on the rise. There were unions, people were getting decent salaries. It was a better way of life for the middle class. Entrepreneurs were thriving. He felt this is a dreadful thing. Corporations could be making much more profits. Stock market could be going up. If only we could limit how much labor makes and labor's power. Well, that continued through Reagan, and the welfare laws of the country were kind of codified in 1996 by Bill Clinton, who said, I'm going to do a drastic change to welfare. And now we've got states with block grants to give out to people who are in need. But if you don't think anyone's in need, what do you do with the cash? You keep it for yourself and use it for other projects that you think are more important. Well, if you read the article that I put out today on WordPress under the voice of Joyce, you'll see that folks are not doing so well. They're in poverty, all right, and they need cash. And we know that when you give cash to people who are in need, they spend it on necessities, they eat healthier, they go to the doctor, and they're able to learn better because they have less stress. The only people who care more about money than the wealthy are the poor and the middle class. We care a lot about money. For us, it's not just the luxuries that it brings, but it's the necessities that make our life livable, like the ability to have child care or early learning for our children and transportation so we can get to jobs. That is one of the key things that is still missing in America, that transportation. Over 100 years ago, all of California's roads were supposed to be railroads. Instead, they became congested, maddeningly slow, overburdened highways. It's time to link the country with clean, light rail, and also with rail that distributes cargo from one port across the country to other areas for distribution. And you don't want just one port. You want to be able to distribute all those containers as rapidly as possible to get them to folks who need them. Not everyone's a Walmart or a Target where there was no supply chain problems. But other folks are seeing it, and we're seeing it on food and gasoline. And truthfully, there's no reason for gasoline prices to be rising. I don't understand it at all. It's only because they can. I think it's actually time for a redistribution of all of those subsidies. In England, they're actually giving tax credits of up to $7,000 if people will go back to wilding their farms. You have to have a small farm and you get money in return for going natural and encouraging biodiversity. I think we can afford to take away the $28 billion that goes to big farms at this point in time, and gentlemen farmers, and a lot of the senators. They don't need it, but we can redistribute that cash to others. And just like we need to keep up the child tax credit or a basic living wage or something that gives the poor and the middle class a way forward. Oh, and don't forget the retraining. It's taken from the 70s till now, 45 years, 50 years of decline? I think that's enough. And I think that it's time for everyone to be participating in democracy. An informed public and a participating public can override whatever obstacles there are and vote for people who believe in what they believe in. Don't look to people who have made a lot of money to help you out unless you see that they've got a history of helping folks out before getting into Congress. If they haven't done it for many, many years, trust me, they got the money, and you might like to have some of it, but you ain't getting it. So be smart. Start putting local powerhouses into office. People that you trust and like and know they care about your well-being. Start at the local and state level and then work up to the federals. Because our life really does revolve around political policy. And if the political policy doesn't advocate for we the people and doesn't try to give all of us a decent living wage and dignity of work, then really, why should we vote for them? Put up your own slates, everyone. Think about what's important to you. It doesn't matter what your color is, what your race is, your ethnicity, your religion. We're all the same. When I do my reaction videos, and probably many of you have never heard them, it doesn't matter if somebody is speaking or singing in Mandarin, English, whatever the language of Kazakhstan is, or any of the other countries, South Korean with BTS, whatever the countries are, all the people have the same emotions and the same feelings. We're all alike. And so think about that when you think about what do we want for America and for Americans. My cousin, who lives in California and is quite well off, says he thanks God and America every day for giving him the opportunity to survive well, and succeed. And his wish is that everyone have that same opportunity. Well, that's my wish too. My wish is that we all have the opportunity to succeed. And if that, you want to call it welfare, you want to call it child care assistance, whatever you want to call it, folks are in need of a leg up. And they're going to need remedial studies. And they're going to need connectivity to the internet, because it's much better for children to be in school than to be learning online. They need the socialization. We should be doing whatever we can to make this country safe for all of us, and especially our children. They're our future, and we should be investing in their health and their learning capacity so that America keeps growing and is prosperous. That's my message, everyone. Can't talk about what's really in the news. It doesn't concern us. What does concern us is how are we going to live our lives? How are we going to survive with COVID in our midst? And how are we going to raise up the poor and middle classes so that they have equal opportunity and we have an entrepreneurial class once again? There's a clean slate for labor out there, but it's a big jump from saying what you want to implementing it. And we got to implement it and see it soon. So take care, everyone, and thank you for listening.